My first job, as I said, was 1.5 lakh. When I left Accenture, my annual package was 45 lakhs per annum. My first investment was in a real estate property. It was about a 14 lakh property in Mumbai. So by 2014, it had grown to 1.4 crores, 10x in 12 years. Phase 1 was 0% equity. To phase 4, where all our surpluses, that is coming out of the active incomes, is going 100% into equity. Overall investments into equity currently is about 24 lakhs total, including the SIP and the STP.
You've explored a
Yes.
lot of mutual funds in your journey. What's your framework?
Thousands of mutual fund schemes, but not everything is sahi hai for every investor, right? So it depends on the time horizon and the risk profile of the investor. An investor who is having a very conservative approach to investing, for such an investor, the asset allocation has to be a little lesser in terms of mid and small caps.
How much was your retirement corpus?
In 2021, when we calculate our retirement corpus, it was 50x of our annual expenses then. We have now reached to a 90x.
Hello, hi Vivek sir. So I would love to start from your early childhood. What was it like?
Yeah, so I was raised in a single income, middle class family. And I remember in those days, and these were late 70s and the whole of 80s, that, I was getting raised in Mumbai. I know that, our wants were very limited. Okay. And we just had about enough money to, take care of our needs.
So you said you were born and brought up in Mumbai. Then how did your career move toward?
The first job that I had, I was earning about 1.5 lakhs per annum package. Okay, but this was 1997 we are talking about. And then the second job in Mumbai was 1.7 lakhs after 8 months. And then couple of years into that, Wipro Technologies was 4.5 lakhs. So that was a kind of a big jump in the year 2000. In the year 2002, I joined Accenture. I started with a 6.75 lakhs annual package. And then Accenture was home for me for about 16 years. When I left Accenture, my annual package was 45 lakhs per annum. And then when I joined this big four company, it was 50. But when I left it, I reached about 65 lakhs. So that was my last job in 2021.
Now you're financially free. Now how's your life look like? Like what is your current income expense breakdown if you could share?
Yeah. So, after 2021, when we realized we were financially free, I took the decision to quit my job. Okay. And then because I had a passion for personal finance and wealth management, I ventured into the mutual fund distribution as a profession. So I continue to have active income from that, as well as my wife, who continues to be employed, right? So both of us, in terms of my income as well as her salary, we earn close to about 8 lakhs per month.
Oh.
Right. And about, we spend about 25% of that in terms of our, monthly expenses, and 75%, which means that 75% of that actually gets invested into mutual funds and predominantly equity now.
So how much was your retirement corpus like?
So in 2021, when we calculate our retirement corpus, it was 50x of our annual expenses then. We have now reached to a 90x. Okay. That puts us very comfortable in the sense that, we will probably not need more than 50x. Okay. So whatever is the remaining 40x and whatever investments we do in the future is the generational wealth, which is going to go into 100% equity.
So how much in total you're investing right now?
Right. So of our monthly surpluses, we are investing about 6 lakhs through SIPs. Okay. And the lump sum money that we had parked in debt mutual funds earlier and now in arbitrage funds, that is also getting systematically transferred. So that's about 18 lakhs per month. So our overall investments into equity currently is about 24 lakhs total, including the SIP and the STP.
Okay. So how did you come to the conclusion, okay, this is the corpus that I required?
I'll probably have to talk about my whole investment journey.
Yeah, okay.
So my whole investment journey starting from, let's say, 2002, or even a little bit earlier, till date, can be actually called out into 4 distinct phases. Okay, so when I first got into the corporate world and had my first job, sometime in '97, between '97 to 2001, really, I was not earning so much. But the real journey for me started in 2002, right? Because that is a year when I also got married. So, like every other middle class, every person who starts earning, parents ask them to buy a house. Right. So that was also my first investment, real estate.
Okay.
Until then, it was a little bit of FDs here and there, but nothing to really talk about. And, it was about a 14 lakh property in Mumbai. It so happened that because it was an under construction property and both of us were earning and, we had a significant amount of surpluses, all of that was going into buying this property. When we got the property in 2005, we had to take no loans for it. And then I think until from that point, from 2005 till about 2008, all our money was going into FDs. And then 2008 is when we bought the second property. Okay, and that is the property that I currently live in. Okay, it's a 3 BHK flat in Thane. The value of the property was 90 lakhs in 2008 when we had bought it, but we had to take a home loan. We took about 40 lakhs of home loan for that, and the remaining 50 lakhs we funded from our savings from the FDs and whatever surpluses we were having at that point of time. And that continued till 2011, because 2011 is when we got the property. Okay, and we had 40 lakh loan, and so we decided to go for a third property, which was again an under construction in Thane, a 2 BHK property, and that again was an under construction. So we continued to pay from our surpluses, and we were also continuing to prepay our home loan for the second property.
Okay.
Right. So by 2015, okay, or rather 2014, we had repaid the loan for the second property.
Okay.
Our first property was already loan free.
Loan-free.
The third property also we were paying from our savings. Right. So by 2014, what we did was we sold off our first property. By then it had grown to 1.4 crores.
Oh.
So 14 lakhs became 1.4 crores, 10x in 12 years.
Wow.
Right. So we sold off that property, and because when you sell a property, there is capital gains that you attract.
Yeah.
So you have to pay tax, and if you want to save those taxes, you invest in another property. So that's what we did. We sold that property and bought a fourth property.
Okay.
Right. So if you look at it, the first property was sold, we bought the fourth.
Yeah.
The second property we had paid off the loans. Right. Third property we had bought from our own savings. Right. And the fourth property we bought out of selling the first property.
Okay.
Right. And around the same time we bought a fifth property in Pune. Right.
Crazy.
So really our journey really started with real estate, and FDs was just a vehicle to park the money for our savings and use that for buying properties. Until 2015 was phase 1, and then start of 2015 was the phase 2, wherein we decided no more real estate, and then we realized that FDs attract a higher taxation. Higher taxation in the sense that it gets taxed at the same rate as your other income, like your salary or rental income that you get out of properties. So we thought we should look for other efficient options, and that's when we came across debt mutual funds. We started to use debt mutual funds initially to park all of our FD money into debt mutual fund. So whatever FD was getting matured was going into debt mutual fund, right? And then we intended to stay over for at least 3 years, before we can then either withdraw it or repurpose it somewhere else. Then the phase 3 is when we started to get a little more comfortable with equity as an asset class, right? So phase 3 started in around 2017.
Okay.
Okay, and then we started to take very small, allocations into equity, right? And that was through a STP route, a systematic transfer plan route. Phase 4 is where we are currently now. Okay, where we know that whatever we need for our, retirement, the retirement corpus as such, for our lives, we already have that in place, right? And in fact, it's in the wealth preservation or wealth, conservation phase. Okay, so whatever we are earning right now is going directly into 100% equity schemes.
Okay.
Right? Because we know that this is the money that we will not need in our lives. It is probably going to be our intergenerational wealth. So if you look at this journey, right, phase 1 to phase 4 now, phase 1 was 0% equity, right? To phase 4, where all our surpluses, that is coming out of the active incomes, is going 100% into equity. Our current allocation is 45% equity, 45% fixed income, and 10% into real estate and gold and cash.
Oh, okay, got it. Now I would love to talk about little about debt mutual funds. I know you stopped investing in debt mutual funds, but way back you used to invest in debt mutual funds. At that point in time, how did you used to pick the debt mutual funds? If you could walk us through that.
Sure. So the most important thing is really to align the investment horizon of the investor to the duration of the fund. The second thing to look at is the quality of these underlying securities, because ultimately what are debt mutual funds? These have securities underlying them. So those have to be at least majority of the fund has to be either a sovereign rated or a AAA rated securities. And the third thing is obviously to understand the domestic and international rate cycles, interest rate cycles, right? So as you know that as the interest rate cycles change, the yield that these debt mutual funds give you, right, also keeps changing. And it's not just limited to us, but because we are so much actually influenced by what is happening outside. So also look at internationally how the rates, interest rate cycles are moving.
Yeah.
And then based on these, decide on which funds to invest at a particular point of time.
Now, one more thing that I would love to talk about is that you talked about arbitrage funds. So, what are exactly arbitrage funds and what are the advantages of it? Like, should one switch from debt mutual funds to arbitrage funds?
As I said, our decision to move from FDs to debt mutual funds was based on the fact that it was more tax efficient.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was a similar reason for arbitrage also. And before we talk about what an arbitrage fund is, we need to understand that our stock markets have two segments of markets. Basically, one is a cash segment, and the other is a derivative future segment. Right?
Okay.
An asset or a security can have price difference between these two segments. Okay, so for example, let's say a stock XYZ is available at 100 rupees in the cash market and available at 110 rupees in the future market.
Okay.
Right? So the arbitrage fund will actually exploit this opportunity. It will buy the 100 rupee and sell the 110. Okay. And these funds are in the sense they do not carry risk because these are covered calls. And what I mean covered calls is that they buy and sell at the same time. So they buy 100 and sell 110 at the same time and make this 10 rupee profit, which is then passed on to the investor in terms of the NAV changes that we see. But the advantage of arbitrage funds is that they give returns similar to FDs, not exactly like FDs, but a little bit lesser maybe. But the biggest advantage is the tax, because arbitrage funds are categorized as equity schemes. Right? And equity schemes have a tax advantage in terms of the fact that if it's a short-term gain, which is if you held the equity scheme for less than 12 months, then you paid only 15% tax back then in 2023. Now it has changed to 20% after 23rd July 2024. And if you held it for longer than 12 months, then you paid only 10% tax in those days, and now that has become 12.5. Okay. The other advantage that was there was that up to 1 lakh of long-term capital gains was tax exempt, right? And that has changed to 1.25 lakhs now.
Yep.
So if you look at it, these are more tax efficient than debt mutual funds. And at the same time, they gave returns which were very similar to debt mutual funds and FDs. So all our new lump sum money started to go into arbitrage fund rather than going into the debt mutual fund.
So how do you select the arbitrage funds?
Yeah. So arbitrage funds, I look at arbitrage funds in terms of two purposes. The first purpose is for people who want to have a lump sum money that they want to invest into equity schemes, can choose a arbitrage fund, okay, and from that arbitrage fund transfer that money systematically into the equity mutual fund scheme that they want to invest in. So there the choice, you do not have much of a choice, right? For example, you want to invest in a XYZ mutual fund equity scheme, you have to select the same fund houses arbitrage fund, right? Because the STP usually happens between two schemes of the same fund house. Right, so there is no choice really in terms of which arbitrage fund to go, and there is only one arbitrage fund every fund house has. So there we should look at performance, and there we can look at point-to-point performance, right? Because these are short-term goals. And the other thing is they could also look at standard deviation and beta. right? You want within the category, you want a fund which is less volatile, so less standard deviation, and at the same time, you want to make sure that if the fund if the category falls by X amount, you don't want your arbitrage fund to fall by that same measure.
Yeah, I would love to, double down on your selection of all the mutual funds. What's your framework for that?
Yeah. So the way I look at returns is not the point-to-point returns or the trailing returns, but the rolling returns of any mutual fund scheme. So rolling returns is basically it tells you the performance of a fund over a longer duration of time. So let's say if I look at a 3-year rolling return for a fund which has a 10-year history, okay, the 3-year rolling return tells me that how the average performance of that fund is over a 3-year period. Starting from a date which is 10 years in the past. So let's say 10 years in the past was 20th October 2014. From that date onwards, okay, there are hundreds or maybe thousands of combinations of those dates, right? 3-year dates. And if you take an average of all those, okay, and if the average of those rolling returns is higher than the category average or higher than the index that it is following, right, then I would consider that as a good fund. Okay. In addition to that, I also look at risk parameters of the funds, which are typically things like standard deviation, Sharpe ratio, the beta and the alpha of the funds.
If you could double down on standard deviation, Sharpe ratio, alpha or beta.
Yeah. So standard deviation is the measure of volatility of an equity scheme. So the lesser, the better. When it comes to the Sharpe ratio, the higher the better. So typically funds that have a Sharpe ratio which is greater than 1 are considered to be better schemes compared to the others because those have lesser risk. The third risk parameter that I look at is the beta, okay, of the fund. So beta is basically how much does this fund fall than the index that it is it is tracking, right? So let's say the index falls by 10 points, okay, if this fund falls only by let's say 9 or 8, okay, so it is considered to be a good fund because then it is actually managing the risk for the investor. And the last one is about the alpha. So alpha basically is how much this fund actually gives returns higher than the index that it is tracking. Right. So again, all of these together. So you need a higher alpha, lower beta, a lower standard deviation, and a higher Sharpe ratio.
Okay.
Okay. So all of these together actually will help you to identify a risk profile of the particular scheme. So it is not that I have to look at risk parameters in isolation, but also the risk parameters has to be aligned with the investor's risk profile. Right, and the time horizon of investment that an investor needs to have. So when you actually compare these two, you are able to actually arrive at a scheme which is more apt to a certain investor. The third thing that I look at is the fact that I typically avoid doing over diversification of the portfolio. So imagine that if you wanted to invest in a large cap scheme, there is no point in having too many large cap schemes in your portfolio, right? Because then you would be typically replicating the whole index.
So how many funds do you have?
So currently the number of schemes that I'm investing in is about 8. Okay, and that is a combination of mid and small flexi caps, focused funds, a little bit of thematic, especially on the consumption side. Okay, and because the small cap space is something which has in terms of the canvas it has is huge, right? So I have 2 schemes in the small cap space, right? So I advise that you can have more than one scheme only in the small cap, but every other category you can limit yourself to one scheme.
On that note, I would love to know what's the one advice would you like to give to a 28 or 30-year-old maybe who wants to become financially free?
First and foremost, again, I would advise people to invest in developing their own skills, right? Because only when you invest in yourself, you'll be able to earn more, and when you earn more, you will save more, invest more, compound more. The other thing to understand is that compounding is not something that you will witness in a few years. You'll at least need 10 years of your investments to compound to see the actual benefits of compounding, right? So if you take the example of Warren Buffett, he started investing at 12, right? And he's 94 now.
Yeah.
Okay, but 99% of his current wealth, which is I think around $146 billion, 99% of that wealth was built only after his age 60.
Yeah.
So you can imagine from 12 to 60 was just 1%,
True.
and 60 to 94 was the remaining 99, right? So never interrupt compounding.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Vivek.
Thank you
It
very
has-
much for inviting me.
Yeah, it has been an honor to host you.